is our new travel telescope, what we call the Journey telescope. This is an 11-inch f4.5, and we have the whole thing here in this hard case, along with this carry case with a shoulder strap for your truss poles. So what we're going to do is we're going to take a look inside the case and at the truss poles and see just how this telescope goes together for you out in the field, and then how it comes apart at the end of the evening. So we'll take our case with the poles, and we'll just set this off to the side for now so that we can focus on what's inside of the case. So we're going to tip the case down. This telescoping handle will fold in, and then we have these two heavy-duty latches that will open up, and we can lift the lid. So here we have the inner workings of the case. Remove this. This is one of your light shields right here with velvet on the inside of it. But here's the whole rest of the telescope all packed away and ready to be transported wherever you're going. This case is good for transport in the field by vehicle, or also we've tested it and it seems to be approved, moving forward for airline transport as well. It has survived the rigors of being checked and showing up at the other end intact. So that's always a very good thing. So what we're going to do here is I'll place that off to the side too. I'm going to start taking all the parts out so we can kind of give you a good idea of how this goes together in terms of assembly. So first thing we're going to do actually is pull out your two altitude bearings right here. I'm just going to set them on the ground. Next to come out is going to be your upper tube assembly, or upper tube ring, since it's just a ring. This has your focuser on it, base for your finder scope, your spider, your secondary mirror, under the Crown Royal bag. Everything's already there, all assembled and ready to go. So we'll take and set that off to the side next. And then the next thing to come out will be what's essentially your mirror box from a traditional truss Dobsonian. I'm going to lift this out. So this is like I said, the mirror box assembly. You can see the primary mirror on the bottom with the mirror cell. And what's neat about what we do here is that this insert here acts as your mirror cover, but also protects the secondary mirror. The secondary mirror from the ring sits inside of here, so that gets protected during transport. Now this pulls off. We can take and put that off to the side as well. And inside of here we have your light shroud and a second cover for the primary mirror to make sure that it's doubly protected. Cover, shroud, and the other foam insert cover as well. And then we have some small accessories that come out. Finder scope and a small counterweight. So we're going to take and put them off to the side as well. And last thing to come out will be the bottom assembly of the telescope, also known as the rocker box. So we're going to place that off to the side there. There's protective foam that will come out. And now we take a look. The inside of the case is empty. We've got all the parts for the telescope out and about. And we're going to cut away. We're going to start again with assembly of the telescope and exactly how it's going to go together. First major step we're going to do here for assembly of the Journey telescope is to take the mirror box and attach the two half-round altitude bearings to it. Now what's nice about this large case that we give you here for transport is that it doubles as a tabletop for you. So this puts the telescope at a more ergonomic position for you to work on it as well, and you can also use it for your eyepieces and your star charts and all that. So it does have multiple uses. But let's move on here. If you'll come down and follow me, we'll take a look at the altitude bearings, which have two small through holes in them. Each bearing has these two holes, and they correspond to these two bolts here on the side of the mirror box. So we're going to take and unthread these two bolts. There's a bolt and a washer, and they're going to go just kind of push them in to the holes on the bearings. All right, same thing with the second one, bolt and a washer. Kind of push it through, and then you're going to take the bearing and you're going to line it up with the holes that the bolts came out of and thread the bolts back into those holes. Alright, so we get that. Thread it in there, and then just thread it in here, and you want to get these pretty tight. Alright, get them as tight as you can. That'll make the telescope more stable. Alright, nice and tight. So that's one side done. Let's flip this around and repeat on this side now. So we're going to take these bolts and washers out. All right, so same thing as before. Bolt and washer. Take and put them through the holes. Bolt and washer through the holes, and again match them up with these two corresponding holes on the telescope. All right, and then we can start to thread them in there. There we go. Nice and tight. Same thing on this side. Get them in there. And now you've got your two bearings attached to the mirror box. What we're going to do now is take this and put this into the lower box, the rocker box. And we do that by lifting from these handy cutouts that we give you here on the side of the telescope. So something like this. We can hold it like this. And then we just want to line this up so that the springs match up with those two clasps in the front. All right, so these two sides have to line up and correspond. And then you drop the telescope in there, and also the telescope should be inside and captured by these Teflon pads on that side, and then the Teflon pads on this side as well. That limits the side-to-side motion of the telescope. So next we're going to move this back a little bit, and we're going to take a look here at the springs. This is a virtual counterweight system. So this allows us to make the telescope a little bit lighter than it would be otherwise, so that it still balances yet doesn't weigh as much. So the springs will take up some of that weight essentially as the telescope is tipped forward to keep it from going too far forward on its own and be too top heavy. So this essentially creates additional back heaviness of the telescope without actually adding the weight. So we call it virtual counterweight. So basically how that works is these two springs, they now will attach to these clasps here. All right, so you want to open up the clasp and put the end of the spring, which has a ring on it, on there and close that up. Same on this side. The spring has a ring on this side, and this clasp will open up, and then you will slide that ring over the clasp, and you let the clasp go, and it closes. This side of the springs, they stay attached to the telescope at all times. It's just this attachment here that you have to make because these two boxes come apart. All right, so as you can see, that was fairly easy to do. No big deal doing that. So now we've got this whole lower assembly of the telescope finished. Now we're going to cut away. We're going to move on to doing the truss poles, and we're going to talk about some different options with that. Next step here with assembly of the Journey telescope will be our truss poles. So there are 4 pairs of poles that will plug into the top of the mirror box down there. Now I mentioned before we've got a couple options with the truss poles. They have these connectors in the middle that essentially allow you, when you unthread the truss poles here, I could show you one here, that allow the poles to come essentially almost in half so that they are shorter, here in this case, shorter for transport. This is good if you're doing airline transport of the telescope because these will fit in your carry-on luggage a lot easier. But if you don't want to mess with this in terms of having to screw them together, each pair of poles, that is, you can just ignore this connector. Even though the connector will still be there, you can use it when you need it, but you don't have to use it. So in that case, you can essentially just have the poles stay together all as one unit, like these are. So these are the poles for this telescope. Again, there's 4 pairs in this longer case all together. So if you're transporting in a vehicle where you might have more room, say for the truss poles all together, leave them together. It'll save you a few minutes in terms of setup and breakdown time. So what we're going to do here now is with the poles either, all together or in pieces, however you need to transport them. Once you put them together, you're going to take the bottom end of the pole, which has this Delrin ball on the end. That plugs into a corresponding socket on top of the mirror box. So that ball plugs into the socket there, and you tighten these thumb screws here. Now again, these should be fairly tight, as tight as you can get them by hand. All right, no tools necessary, just by hand. All right, and then one thing to note is the truss connectors on top, they need to be in this orientation so that the L is essentially facing in this way, not the other way. So they got to come in and go like this so that the upper tube assembly sits on top properly. Right, we can take the other 3 sets of poles out, and they essentially, obviously, will plug in the same way on each one. All right, so again, ball and socket, plug in, they plug in, tighten them up. All right, get them tight. Again, nice and tight on the bottom. All right, so let's rotate this around again. All right, 3rd set of poles. Plug in. And then now, watch, if we take a look here, this is the incorrect way to do it, just to show that. These connectors are facing the wrong way compared to the other 2, which are correct. So let me take and rotate this. So you just want to make sure you do that before you get too far along and find out that they were in the wrong orientation. Right, tighten them down. And then finally we get to the 4th pair of poles. And they're going to plug in here and there. And what I'm doing up top here with my left hand is just to make sure that these connectors are flat. And essentially that would be bad, or that would be bad. It would just be more difficult to put the upper tube assembly on. So these you just want to have flat. So hold them like this, and then we're going to tighten down the bottom and get that one tight, and then get this one tight. And now your truss poles are on. We're going to cut away. Next step is going to be the upper tube assembly, putting that on and putting on some of the associated hardware. I'm holding in my hand here the upper ring for the Journey telescope. So this has several things on it that I want to describe briefly. The first of which is the focuser here. We replaced the standard set screws with these small thumb screws here. So if you loosen the thumb screw, you can rotate the focuser to get it at a nice ergonomic, comfortable position to use, in addition to orienting the knobs this way for when you put the upper ring back into the box or the case for transport. All right, so we'll just lock that into place. And then also standard equipment on this upper ring is going to be a secondary dew heater. So a heater that sits behind the secondary mirror to provide a little bit of heat to keep the secondary mirror high and dry. After we take the cover off, you can see the mirror, and you can see some wiring going behind the mirror. So this is bringing 9-volt power to the resistors behind the mirror to provide a little bit of heat. And how that happens is we have a holder here for a 9-volt battery, and then that goes through a series of wires here to a fuse protection unit, and then it comes out and goes across a flat wire across one of the spider vanes, and then again back into the holder behind the mirror, and you have an LED light here that tells you that the heater is running. All right. In this case, most people will find that very useful. Since this is such an open unit, dew will tend to settle on this without a heater on there. So anyway, let's get to setting this up. You want to stand behind the telescope facing the nameplate on the bottom in terms of orienting this upper ring in the proper fashion. So standing behind it, nameplate, take the upper ring, hold it like this, and you're going to take and drop these connectors. All right, you'll see these connectors have 2 pins on them. They match up with the 2 corresponding holes in the connectors on top of the truss pole pairs. All right, so I find you just kind of want to get the screw started there, or the knob. All right, and then we can go on to the next one again. Kind of push it through so that the pins go through the holes in the connectors. Start the knob going. All right, let's swing around to this one. Again, just make sure we get everything on there. The pins should go through the holes. All right, so that's your 3rd pair right there. And then the 4th pair here, again, pins through the holes, and then the knob started. Now that you've got all 4 in, though, now I want you to tighten the knobs as tight as possible. So this is where the structure is going to get its rigidity from. All right, so there's no collimation shift. All right, so make sure you go around and you get all 4 nice and snug up. All right. So now, I mean, you're very close to being totally assembled at this point. The next thing to do is we're going to cut away, we're going to come back, and we're going to do the shroud on here, your light shroud, to go on the assembly here, and then a couple more things and you'll be ready to go. Here I'm holding the shroud for the Journey telescope. You'll notice on one side of it, it has a square cutout that's made for the focuser to poke through the shroud. So what we want to do here is, to get the shroud on, you want to take the hole so it's facing you, and then start working your arms through the shroud, both hands through, both arms through the shroud, through the opening, and then you're going to, I find it's easiest to hook the far side of the shroud around the focuser here, and then that allows you to then roll the other side of the shroud over on the other side of the ring. And then you want to start working it down from around your arms so that you get it fully around the ring. And then same thing goes for the side closest to you now. You want to make sure you get that in as well, or that on I should say. There we go. Alright, so bring that down and around. Now the easiest thing to do from here is just keep pulling it down. Alright, get it past all the hardware, so now you've got a good idea of what's going on. You can find the bottom seam, which you'll feel a piece of elastic in the bottom here. So grab that and start pulling that down to kind of separate the top from the bottom of the shroud. Alright, so you're going to pull that down, 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 all the way. And now we just have to make sure that the hole for the focuser showed up in about the right spot. Alright, so here it's rotated a little bit further than we want. So you just want to take the shroud. It's stretchy and it'll slide on the poles. It's nice and slick, so no problem there. Just want to rotate it around so the hole now is closer to the focuser. Alright, so we went a little bit too far, so let's go back a little bit. There we go. Alright. So now the top seam will also have elastic in it. So we just want to roll that up on top of the ring here and get that like that. Alright, and kind of just get your hole here for the focuser set. Alright, so I get that on there. Kind of looking like that. We can finish pulling the shroud down here. Alright, now to keep the shroud down fully, we could take the elastic band and just wrap that around these extensions here where the truss poles connect. So wrap that around there. Rotate it this way, take this, wrap that around there. Same thing with the front. You can wrap it there. Then on the fourth side, we could also wrap that as well. Alright, so here we go. Last thing with the shroud. On this version of the shroud, we have to take and tuck the shroud underneath for the focuser, or not the focuser, the finder bracket here. On future versions, we'll have a second square cutout so that just pops through as well. But on this initial prototype version, we just take and tuck that underneath. There we go. And then pull that there. And now you've got your shroud in place. Next thing is this very first piece we talked about in the beginning. This is a light shield. You may or may not need this. It depends. If you have a lot of extraneous light at your observing location, you probably want this. If you don't bother with it. But if you want to use it, it installs on the side of the upper ring opposite from the focuser. So you're going to take and pull the shroud down, and then this will tuck in right under the knob on that side, and then it'll tuck in under the knob on that side, and you want to lift the shroud back up and over. So now you've got this extension that blocks stray light from getting into the focuser here. Alright, now the next thing to do, alright, because we're almost there, almost done. Two more things are the last two little accessories we had in the beginning. Your finder telescope, in this case it's the Rigel Quick Finder, and your counterweight. So this simply plugs in up there, and then on the back clicks into place. So there's your finder scope ready to go. This last piece, your counterweight, this has a threaded stud coming out of it. That threads into an insert down here. Alright, so we're going to thread that in there. Alright, so there you go. So that adds the necessary weight. Now the Journey telescope is balanced, and you can take a medium weight eyepiece, such as this one here, a large 1.25" eyepiece. You can place that into the focuser, and then you can also rotate the focuser, as we mentioned earlier, to bring the knobs to a comfortable location. And now the telescope is balanced, you can take it, point it anywhere you want. And the nice thing about the bearings is that they've got these stops on there too, so you don't have to worry about hyperextending the telescope and going past vertical. It has an automatic stop on it here, same thing, and actually more importantly, here to keep the telescope from going past horizontal and going too low and smashing down into the ground. That's really it. That's your Journey telescope there, the 11-inch f4.5 version. We set it up, probably I would say in under 15 or 12 or 10 minutes, depending on how quick and proficient and comfortable you get with this design. And then it all packs away into the case and the truss pole bag over there. So enjoy, thank you, and let me know if you have any questions.